What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the all-new Wager Alarm. My name's Howard Bender. With me here is Craig Mish. You know us from Fantasy Alarm for all your fantasy sports needs. You also know us from Sirius XM Radio. Craig and I joining the Wager Alarm team here to talk to you about picks to make, prop bets to make, and all breakdowns of NFL, MLB, college football, and eventually NBA and NHL as well. Football season, we're just right on the brink of it here, so Craig and I wanted to jump in and talk about a number of prop bets we've been looking at, maybe some picks we were looking at, as well as some college football breakdown here as well for at least one game. So, Craig, let's start with the NFL here. Let's talk about some of these over-unders on wins, these prop bets we're looking at. Where do you want to start?
Well, first of all, I think it's a really exciting time for Wager Alarm and for our family at Fantasy Alarm, because back in May, when the Supreme Court overruled the PAPSA Act and basically left it up to the states to decide whether or not gambling was going to be illegal or not, we now have a handful of states where it is. And I think, Howard, by the time that we go to 2019, everybody who's watching these kind of live streams is literally going to be able to open their phone and place a bet. So why not get a kind of head start on that? I'm sure a lot of people wager on their own anyway, in different ways that they have it. It's pretty obvious the way that it's been going. For anybody who's listened to me on Sirius XM over the last 8 years, they know my feelings on gambling. I'm pro-gambling. I'm all for it. I talk about it a lot on my radio show, whether it's college football or pro football. I love to discuss those elements. And I think also for people who are on Fantasy Alarm, it'll give an opportunity for people who have never bet before to not just bet on college football, but to understand who those players are in those games. It'll give you a heads up in the fantasy world, too. It's the reason why going into every fantasy football season, people don't necessarily know who these college football players are, Howard, and then they just look at the combine and draft blindly these guys without even knowing what kind of system they were in or what kind of players they're in. That's the kind of information that we can deliver, we will deliver on Wager Alarm. So that being said, at the beginning of the season, Las Vegas assigns, or the online sports books, or everybody else assigns numbers in terms of the amount of wins that they believe the NFL team will win at the end of the season. Now, understand this. When Las Vegas sets their lines and they throw out a win total on a specific NFL team, Howard, they don't believe that that's the amount of wins that the team is going to win. That's not what they believe. They want action on the under and they want action on the over, so they get enough sides on both to just make money off the juice. That's the way that this works. So from my educated point of view, what I usually do every year is I'll pinpoint a few of these totals and try to determine which ones will go over and under. And I've been pretty successful at the years of doing it. The first team that I'll start with here in 2018, and I don't think that this should be a surprise to anyone really, but to me, a team that was in the Super Bowl, has perennially been a playoff team, is getting very overrated going into the year, and that's the Seattle Seahawks. I just really think their number right now in Vegas is 8. There are a lot of places where you can't even get 8 anymore, meaning that you'll have to lay a lot of juice. You'll have to lay $150 or $160 just to win 100. That's usually not advised. So then your number would be 7.5. The Seahawks lost a lot of players on defense through the years. This Legion of Boom is not a Legion anymore. All those guys are gone. It was a bad sign a couple of days ago to see that Doug Baldwin may not be 100%. Their offensive line, as we know, it's been documented. It hasn't been great. The rookie running back who they drafted has already been hurt. They already play in a tough division. Their out-of-conference games are Green Bay, Carolina, Minnesota. Howard, my first one on the board in 2018 is going under on the Seattle Seahawks. I think that they're going to have a disappointing season. I'm sure they'll still win 5 or 6 games. I think 8 will be a reach for them, so that's the first one for me.
I have to agree with you here. I think that what tends to happen is that you sit there and you look at a team and you look at their name and you look at what they've done in the past, and there's a lot of people who look at them and say, well, Russell Wilson's still a viable quarterback option. You hit the nail right on the head. Doug Baldwin already said that he doesn't think he's going to be 100% at all throughout the year. He's talking about himself being at like 80 to 85%. They lost Paul Richardson to free agency. There are no other wide receivers here. None whatsoever. The offensive line, yes, in shambles. Chris Carson won the starting running back job. He's been one of those, I don't know, can you use him? Can't you use him? But you also have to look at what they're in. You just cited a lot of tough matchups out of their division. Let's take a look at their division right there. The Rams. These are not yesterday's Rams. This is a much different team here, and with the Seattle defense basically a shell of what it used to be, you can't automatically guarantee 2 wins over the Rams. You can't do that over the 49ers either.
I think there's no wins over those teams. I think they may lose all 4. Remember back when Pete Carroll and that team was going, it was late game heroics a lot of times for Russell Wilson to even get them to wins because their defense played so well. I don't know what Richard Sherman is or what he's going to be in San Francisco, but he was the anchor and the leader of that team, and he's gone. Cam Chancellor, Averill, they've lost a lot of players through the years, and people just seem to think that everything is going to be okay. I'll tell you another thing, Howard, is that the anchor of that defense right now, Earl Thomas, doesn't even want to be there. So what happens if halfway through the season or 5 games into the season, Seattle decides, and there aren't a lot of players traded at the NFL trade deadline, of course, like there is at the baseball trade deadline. But if Seattle is 2-5 and they could get something back, Earl Thomas, last year was talking about wanting to play for Dallas. I just think that this is a major miscalculation. Look, most teams in the NFL, you got to hand them 4 or 5 wins. You just have to do it. I mean, outside of the Browns through the years, there's going to be a surprise team that's going to lose 2 games, and there's going to be, or going to win 2 games. There's going to be a surprise team that's going to lose 2 games. It happens every year, but there's going to be 4 or 5 wins coming from somewhere. But Seattle getting to 8 for a push or 9 to go over, it's just not something that I see this year.
Okay. Now, if a lot of places are going to throw down 7.5 wins instead of the 8 wins, are you still on the under there? Do you see them 7, 6, 5 wins for the season?
Yeah, I think that would come down to what kind of bankroll you have. So, for example, let's say that your bankroll on an NFL win total, let's say it's $100. Let's just use $100. You feel confident in that. Maybe what you'd want to do is put $50 on the under 8 and $50 on the under 7.5. Remember, if it lands on 8, you get your money back. You don't lose that. And then provided that it went over 8, you'd basically break even at that point. You'd lose a little bit of money on the juice. You'd lose, $20, $30, $40, something like that. That would be the estimate as to what I would do if it was $100. But for me, if I feel that much conviction and confidence in a play, I would even go under the 7.5. Remember, this opened up at 8. A lot of the sharp minds in Vegas have bet this thing all the way down to 7.5. So to bet the 8, you got to go minus 150. That means you have to risk $150 or $160 to win 100 if that's the route that you want to go. But I'd be confident in doing 7.5 or 8 for sure.
All right, let's talk about a couple of other these wins totals that you really like, the ones where you find yourself gravitating a lot more towards.
Yeah, I think the Bears is an interesting one for me too. That's 6.5 right now. It's pretty much even money. And look, this is kind of one of those teams that I think that could come out of nowhere a little bit this year. I really like the new offensive system that they have with Matt Nagy. I like the draft picks that they made. And the Bears, for some reason, they always seem to play competitive football when they're at home. So a win or 2 would have to go their way that you wouldn't expect. And given the fact that they had such an atrocious season in terms of win-loss record last year, they're going to get the Buccaneers, they're going to get the Dolphins, they're going to get the Jets, and they're going to get the Bills. So if they can somehow scrape out 3 out of 4 wins against Tampa, Miami, New York, and Buffalo, and then in their division, Howard, just go 4-4. I mean, they don't even have to have a winning record. Just split those games. We know they're not going to win at Green Bay. They're probably not going to win at Minnesota. I get that. They'll probably lose all 4 to those if they can. But again, you win the games against the teams that are subpar, and you have to have a little luck along the way. Let's be honest. I could see this thing. This isn't like something that I would say is a lock and take your life savings or put anything on it. But in terms of value, I think the value is over 6.5 there. You get to the end of the season. You go into the last game, remember, you bet $100, for example, on the Bears over 6.5. If they have 6 wins going into the last game, you can even hedge at that point. I definitely think they'll have 6 wins. It's just a matter if they get to 7 or 8. And I do like the Bears' chances there. I think they will be a lot improved over what I saw last year. There were so many games that John Fox was just, I mean, it was like sleepwalking watching through that game. No chances taken. We didn't see really a lot of development from Mitch Trubisky. I think you see him get to that next level. The coach of the Bears has made quarterbacks very viable through the years. A lot of short passing game. They drafted Anthony Miller. They have Allen Robinson now on the outside. They have Howard. They have Tariq Cohen. And Burton. I like what the Bears' offense likes. I don't love what the defense looks like. They could get beat up a little bit, but I think the Bears go over 6.5.
Okay, I can get behind you here on the Bears. I'm a little skeptical. I might be a little bit more skeptical than you are. Great rationale there. I worry very much about the divisional play over there for the Bears. The Packers are always a tough team. I know the Bears play them tougher, but the Packers are definitely a tough team. Vikings are traditionally a tough team. It's going to be, I'm on the fence with Detroit right now. So, I mean, I think, yeah, you're right. They're going to, not only do they need to win like 3 of those garbage games or pushover games, so to speak, but I do think they need to eke out a surprise win or two inside the division over there. Let's move on to another team where you're looking at AFC teams. Anybody you like?
Yeah, I like Buffalo under. I think that's probably the easiest one. We'll talk about that with week 1 also coming up here, what's happened with that line. There's a lot of people reacting to the preseason in different ways with all 30 teams. In general, I don't get worked up about the preseason. I don't bet on the preseason. And I think that what we've seen is the message from the players and the owners is loud and clear. They don't want to play these preseason games anymore. They're not even playing guys in the 3rd week of the preseason. We are headed toward 2 extra regular season games. That's what's happening. It's going to happen. This was the final straw, I think. I mean, how can this keep happening every year with the preseason? Forget about injuries, where teams just don't play anyone even in the 3rd game anymore. This has been like insane, where you really don't know who's going to play or do what. This is more mystery going into a football season than I've ever seen. That being said, there's no mystery about Buffalo. But Buffalo has looked so poor, so bad. Their out-of-conference schedule isn't that easy because they had a decent year, as you know, last year. And they got into the playoffs too. But they've lost a lot of players. They messed around with the quarterback situation, I think, in the wrong way here. They've already had an injury. There's a chance, I think, Peterman's going to end up starting the season for them at quarterback. Their offensive line is a mess. There's a chance they're the worst team in the NFL. Originally, I thought Arizona may be that team, and they're having quarterback issues as well going into the season. But no, man, Buffalo under 6 is I can't see a way that Buffalo gets to 7 wins. I suppose the reason why it's 6, Howard, is because they will have games against the Jets and the Dolphins. But I don't see 6 coming from there. It's my 3rd favorite of the 3 that we just reviewed, but if I had to give a 3rd, and I don't like to do 10 of these things, I don't think there's value in making 10 bets on season long. But my 3 favorite ones are the ones I just gave. So Seattle would be my number 1, the Bears would be my number 2, and I just can't see Buffalo getting to 6 wins. Can't see it.
I have a hard time seeing Buffalo get to 6 wins either. Yeah, when the news came out that Josh Allen was being examined through concussion protocol, and the next thing you know, everybody in Buffalo is like, oh, well, we'd be okay with Nathan Peterman as our starting quarterback. Why wouldn't we be okay with Nathan Peterman as our starting quarterback? So, yeah, a lot of problems there. I think they did get the 6-win mark here just probably because of their defense. Their defense really stepped it up last year. I don't necessarily think that they're going to be able to do that again this season here. Let me ask you if that shifts down to, like, say, 5.5 wins, which is all very, very likely.
It is. Here. It is happening. Yeah, it is happening. 5.5. Again, if you have conviction of something, and again, the way to do this and do it the right way, we'll do videos on this, is that you can't bet the board. You can't bet all 30. You can if you're just doing this for fun and it's $5 and you don't care. But if you're looking at this as making money, you want to do on a given weekend or given props 2 or 3. Keep it light. If you want to get aggressive with it, get aggressive on what you like the most, not putting it everywhere just for the action. The more action you have, the more likely you are to lose. So those 3, I would even go a half down. 5.5 would be fine with me.
Okay. Let's talk about some of the lines that we're looking at for week 1. Let's stick with Buffalo here for a second because the line it opened at Baltimore -3.5. Okay. The line right now is at -6.5.
Yeah.
So right off the bat here, though, I mean, could it be 7? Could it be 7.5 come opening day, or the opening kickoff here for this game? Obviously, you want to throw your money on Baltimore, don't you?
You do, but again, the value right now is if you're going to bet next Sunday, and this is a lesson to learn, is that you sometimes have to identify what the lines are going to be on Sunday, either to your benefit or to your detriment. So, for example, and again, the way Vegas is setting the lines is they want the action on both sides. But if you wanted to take Baltimore, the time was to do it was like a week ago, but the time is still now. You do not want to wait until Sunday at 12:30 Eastern or your time, Howard, 9:30 Pacific, and throw my money down on Baltimore because it's not easy to identify every game, but before that time the Ravens are going to be probably 7.5. It's going to go up another point. So if this is the bet that you want to make and educate yourself on how lines work, if you don't know, I do think the Ravens are going to be a much more significant favorite even a week from now than they are right now. So you can bet the games now. You don't have to wait. Some of the other games during the season you do, week 2, week 3. But sometimes waiting, and by the way, Howard, if you like Buffalo and you think that everything that we're saying is wrong, which could certainly be the case, it's the NFL, wait right until 12:30, 9:30, and bet Buffalo. You'll get a ton of points if that's the way, and maybe Buffalo covers or maybe Buffalo wins. This is the way things work.
Yeah, I mean, when the lines come out, how quickly do you jump on them? If you see a line that you genuinely feel that this line is way off, and that this line is going to shift dramatically between like when they first come out
Sunday night. Yeah.
You know, when they first come out on Sunday night to the following week there. I mean, how quickly do you jump on it or do you wait for some line movement at all?
No, you got to do it right away if you think a line is going to go one way or the other. If there's an injury, or you feel like, because you want to, in general, go against the way the public sees things because the public is usually wrong. It's the reason why Las Vegas has those beautiful hotels. It's not from people winning all the money. It's from the public being wrong and walking in and just placing random bets. It's not the sharps. It's the squares, as they say. So you can get a lot of value on a Sunday night or Monday for sure, Howard. But the reason why some people don't like to bet on those 2 days is because there are traditionalists who like to see the injury report. They want to make sure their guys aren't hurt, that they're going to be siding with, and I suppose there is something to be said for that. But as an example, using Baltimore and Buffalo again, I'll have to take a look and see who the Bills play in week 2. They may play Minnesota week 2. I think I looked at that in advance. So if the Ravens were to beat the Bills 21-0, let's just say next Sunday, whatever that line is coming out Sunday night initially is going to be bet up big time on the other side because people will just start betting against the Bills over and over. That may lead you to believe, I'll take the Bills then. I'll wait till Sunday right before the game because I'm going to get the most points. And there's something to be said. It's not about wins and losses on the value of the line. And you're right. If you can identify those things, it doesn't always work. But the key is when you go into a game and the game kicks off on Monday and you look at that line, you have to ask yourself, did I get the very best line possible? Did I wait till the last minute? Did that work? Did I bet it early enough? Did that work? And if you're always constantly getting the best lines, it gives you a much higher percentage of chance of winning.
Right on. Week 2, Buffalo hosts the Los Angeles Chargers.
Oh, the Chargers. And then it's Minnesota week 3. I was actually thinking for fantasy because what I'm doing is I'm picking all of the defenses against Buffalo to start. I'm trying to do that at the end of my drafts. So I have Baltimore, Chargers, Vikings. And then I'll cut one, right after the other. I really think this offense for Buffalo is going to be a problem.
It's a smart play. All right. Well, listen, let's stick with the lines here. And let's stick with the teams that we're kind of eyeballing here on these over-under wins. Let's talk about the Seattle game. Denver against Seattle. Denver's -2.5 right now. Listen, Denver's got some changes that they've made here. Case Keenum is under center right now, which to me is obviously it's an improvement over the Paxton Lynch, Trevor Siemian debacle that we've witnessed over the last 2 years for them. They've got the personnel. They've improved on the defense there. You add Bradley Chubb to that pass rush, him on one side, Von Miller on the other. We already talked about the fact that the Seattle offensive line is pretty lousy. So are we locking down Denver here at 2.5? Do you see this line changing, growing a little bit more now between now and the start of the season?
Yeah, it'll probably be 3. It opened up at 1.5 or 2 a month ago or 2 months ago when they set the opening lines. It does play into the narrative that I'm playing with Seattle, and if you don't think they're going to win 8 games, this would be one that they would lose. I think they're getting a lot of respect here for the wrong reasons. I'm just not really sure why. I'm going to guess because Denver's had such a bad season last year that people are a little bit unsure. But I think Keenum's a good upgrade for the Broncos. They added backfield help with Freeman. They still have two very viable receivers on the outside. You mentioned some of the defensive changes that they made. This could be a low-scoring game. It could be a 16-13 game, Howard. I could see that. And if that's the case and you want to bet Denver, then you need to do it now. Why would you wait? The Broncos are -2.5. If the line goes to 3 and you wait and Broncos win 16-13, you cost yourself money by waiting. On the flip side, if you think that Seattle is the team that you want to take, then yeah, you wait probably right up until kickoff, and then you get your 3 points. And online, you can do some maneuvering with the lines too, depending on where you're betting. But for me, I do like Denver in week 1. When we talk about the Super Contest next week, I'm fairly certain that this will be one of the 5 games that I will pick. It's one of the ones that I like early on. The reason why I didn't say, Baltimore being a slam dunk is because I don't know what the line is going to be next week. I mean, when they announce Peterman, Howard is the starter, if they do, I mean, that line could go to 8. I mean, it very well could. And the Ravens have looked really good too in the preseason without Flacco for the most part. So I definitely think Denver is the play here. We'll have to see what the line is, but my advice is if you want to bet the Broncos, you bet it now.
All right, let's talk about the Super Contest real quick here because you did bring it up, and this is something that actually you're going to play in, I'm going to play in. Let's talk, and we're going to continue to talk about this. We're going to use this live stream and the videos here at Wager Alarm, at Wager Alarm, and we're gonna talk about this. I think that this is actually it's really good to just kind of kick everybody off here with what we're going to be covering here. It's not just about the lines, not just about the over-unders, it's not just about the prop bets. Describe the Super Contest. Tell them what we're going to be doing, Craig.
Yeah, the Super Contest consists of a lot of just public people and a lot of the smartest guys who bet football in the world. And what you do is you create your own name. Some people use it anonymously, and some people use it for publicity. It just depends on who you are and what you do. And then over at the Westgate Hotel in Las Vegas, they're the ones that house this. And it's a $1,500 entry. And there are so many entries, Howard, that the pool can get close to $1 million at the end of the season. I think the prize pool is $1 million. And people win money for finishing in the top 5, top 10, et cetera. There's some tiered winning there. But essentially what you're doing is by Saturday morning, each week you're picking 5 games against the spread. And the standings are kept the entire season. It's very similar to if you were doing a football pool just with your buddies each week. You get it and you fill out the picks, except for this is the top 5. And it really becomes interesting to see the way the public views the bets. They release, the Super Contest does the consensus picks and who everyone picked before the games begin on Sunday. And obviously, if you choose, you can submit your picks on Thursday before the Thursday night game. In history, I really haven't used I usually just pass on the Thursday night game. It's early in the week to have to make the plays on all the other ones. Right. And just with scheduling, and I think of all the years that I've done this or paid attention, I maybe used it once or maybe even twice. So it's usually just those Sunday games, and you can use obviously the Monday games too. So you pick 5 games against the spread based on what the lines are posted, which is early on in the week. I believe it's Tuesday or Wednesday. And then you submit the picks, and at the end you see where you stack up in the standings. So it's a lot of fun. It gives you the opportunity to see how good you are as a handicapper. The cost is expensive, and it is $1,500 to enter. You can do multiple entries, as many as you like if you choose. And the goal is to have a pretty good percentage at the end of the season. So I get excited about it every year. And the interesting part about this is that in general, through the years, the most picked teams each week, meaning the consensus picks by the entire pool of people who are in it, and there's thousands, is usually wrong. It's usually wrong. Whoever is picked in the top 5, like let's say, for example, we used the number 1 consensus pick overall would be the Ravens against the Bills. The Ravens are going down. The Ravens are going. They may lose the game outright. The public in this case, the winning percentage must be 20-30% on the consensus. And I remember looking at the consensus each week and thinking, if my picks are in there, I'm dead. And right. in general, that's the way it did play out. It was very rare that those consensus picks won. So you'll have yours, I'll have mine. We'll see how we do.
Absolutely. We'll sit there. We'll throw them down. We'll bring them out here on the live stream. and just kind of go through everything. And, well, you can side with Craig, you can side with me. We could do this together here. We can figure it all out. It's going to be a very interesting contest. It's going to be a lot of fun to do throughout the entire season here as well. I mean, we all do those pools with our buddies at the bar, whatever you want to do, where everybody's picking against the spread, and the winner of the week ends up buying drinks for everybody else. Well, if we win at the end of the year, we'll buy everybody drinks. How about that?
That's fair. And look, it's frustrating because you never know how. I mean, I find myself more interested in that honestly than fantasy every week. I've paid attention to it so closely, but to go to start off and go 5-0 or 4-1 and to see your name up there in the standings is like, it's just it's amazing. So it's tough though. It's not easy to do because it looks so easy that so you're saying I don't have to pick all the games, I just have to pick 5? Oh God, I could pick 4 out of 5 every week like that. Yeah, you'd be surprised.
I'll be 15-0 by the end of week 3. It's
there. It is great. There it is.
Let me just start spending the money now. All right, so yeah, super contest coverage there. That's going to happen on a regular basis for us here. Let's get back to some lines here. How about some over-unders here, Craig? Are there any over-unders that you're looking at now? I know it's definitely early, I think, for the over-unders, and this betting an over-under for me might be more about studying that injury report, seeing who's there. But for the same token, you don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, and if you got a tasty-looking over-under, you want to jump on it early. Any of them that stand out to you right now?
Yeah, the one that's moved down is the Titans-Dolphins. Opened up at 46.5. It's trending down at 45. It could even get lower. And this is kind of about game flow a little bit here. And two teams, the Dolphins, who have struggled a ton on offense without Ryan Tannehill, they get him back, and you don't really know exactly what he's going to be. And we know what the Titans are. The Titans just run that ball and milk that clock. They did it all last year with DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry. They just didn't show a lot of faith in Marcus Mariota. Now, look, they do have a better offense, supposedly. Corey Davis maybe takes the next step. They have Taylor, I think the young kid who we saw in the preseason, he looked pretty good. Maybe Titans offense is a little bit more dynamic, but in general, Howard, it's run on first down, run on second down, maybe even run on third down, and they take that clock all the way down. Maybe that's the reason why this total is shooting down, but it does look like it could be a low-scoring affair for two teams that don't set the world on fire. They really don't have a lot of fantastic offensive weapons, I think, on either team. Good weapons, and Tennessee getting Lewis certainly is there. Drake playing more for Miami. Stills having the deep threat. The quarterback is back. For Tannehill, but this could be a defensive game. I'll make my final decision as we go into the games next week, but if you are going to consider betting the under on this game, you should do it now because I think it's going to go lower.
Really interesting. I almost want to just take the over on this game, just knowing how bad that Miami run defense is. And let's face it, the Miami run defense is going to be atrocious. You want to talk about tracking something for DFS purposes, daily fantasy sports? Guess what? I'm looking at running backs facing Miami on a regular basis here. So I'm kind of, I kind of look at the whole Derrick Henry, Dion Lewis tandem there. And I think offensive coordinator Matt LaFleur could get a little creative here. And in addition to pounding the rock just right up the gut on Miami, I think he can get a little crazy here. This one's I'm on the fence here.
The other thing too is
be under.
It's a fair point of yours, but I think that you just made it for me because if they're going to run the ball and have success, they're not going to throw that ball, man, and that's just going to be milking clock in terms of game flow. But again, they could listen. Derrick Henry could break off a 50. He did it against Miami, I think, last year. He could break off a 50-yard run anytime, and that certainly would change the game. But Gase is more of an aggressive type coach. It certainly could go over. But in general, with the NFL, I'm always looking for unders. People love betting the over. Nobody wants to watch a game, Howard, and see no scoring, and that's what you're rooting for, what you're betting the under. It's very hard to do, but that's usually where the value lies, is trying to identify which of those games they're not going to be scoring in, because the public wants to just bet on scoring. That's what they want to do. That's
the thing. And the majority of people, when they bet the over-under, they bet on what they want to see, Not what they think they see, not what the research tells them they're going to see. It's what they want to see. So yeah, this could be an instance right here where I want to see the Tennessee running backs just light up Miami's defense here, and that's just not the way to do it. That's betting with your heart, not betting with your head. So
there's also value in lines too, though. Again, you get a line at 46.5. This thing goes down to 44, which is possible. One more point, I think, would be the most it would go down. And if you knew that the line was going to go down, Howard, no matter if you win or lose the bet, you got 2.5 points better than the opening line, and that's a win. And that's half of this. We know out of every 100 games, if you're doing this the right way, you're going to win 50, you're going to lose 50. So that's 50%. It's just a matter of how much higher of 50% you're going to go. You're never going to get to 90% or anything like that, or even 80%. So it's how many out of those extra games did you get the line value there and how close it came to the line.
All right, so here we go. NFL Week 1 coming up. Some prop bets that we're looking at here. We like Seattle with the under 8 wins. We even like them under 7.5. We like the Bears over 6.5. We like the Bills under 6 wins here. We're going to still study these lines for Week 1, but as it stands right now, we think that you should get your money in on Baltimore now with the line here, so before it moves again and that point spread increases. I like Denver over Seattle here at minus 2.5. I feel you do too, Craig. We're split on Titans, Dolphins over under. We're split. Craig says do the under. I'm non-committal right now. How about that?
Yeah, and that's the good thing is you have to make your own analysis and your own picks and again, for me, I can't stress this enough, is just trying to understand what the opening lines and closing lines are going to be. It really isn't about you winning or losing. It's about getting the best line. A lot of times these games, Las Vegas is so sharp, it comes right down to where the spread is. And you never want to be yourself in a situation where you said to yourself, oh, if I had bet this 2 days ago or 2 hours ago, I would have won. That's a horrible. I don't care about wins and losses. I could live with that. I have to try and get the very best lines or I'm miserable.
Right. I gotcha. All right, so we'll come back to NFL in another video here, guys. In the meantime, let's talk a little college football right now, Craig. Games that you look at, games that you like. I mean, the spreads for me in college are so up and down. You actually wrote an article here on Wager Alarm talking about how you look at college football and how you like to zone in on a specific conference and study that conference real well. So where are you looking this week? I know it's kind of a small. Is it full slate this weekend?
It's pseudo.
Okay. So talk to me.
80%. And again, with conference play not starting for a few weeks, the first week of the season, you're getting a lot of these very big inflated lines. The ones that are not inflated, you'll have Florida State taking on, and I'll start from ahead and move backward. You'll have Florida State taking on Virginia Tech Monday night. You have LSU taking on Miami Sunday night. Those are the only 2 games that are going to be played. And then you have a sort of full slate on Saturday. And depending on when you're watching this live stream, there are some games on Thursday night as well, although many of the marquee games are Saturday. The biggest marquee game on the Saturday board is Michigan and Notre Dame. That's a too close to call game. The line is like 1.5 either way. Both these teams are similar. The game is at Notre Dame. Alabama is the best team in the country. They'll open up as number 1 or number 2 in the country. They're a huge favorite over Louisville. You know who the quarterback of Louisville has been for the last few years. It's been Lamar Jackson. He's gone. It's going to be trouble probably for Louisville. Can they keep it within 20? I think that there's a chance of that. So then what it comes down to, Howard, is that when you're looking at these games in the opening week and you see such big point spreads in Las Vegas or anywhere else, you can't really get down a ton of money. There's no betting hundreds of thousands of dollars on a minus 30 or anything like that. Las Vegas understands that. You can shop around your money and do different things. But really, when you get into week 2 and week 3 of the season, you start to get more clear matchups. Saturday night, the one game that I looked at, because I remember going back to last year, it was a very disappointing season for the Oregon Ducks last year. Oregon has been phenomenal at home through the years. It's been the toughest place to play in all of college football. But the problem was they lost their starting quarterback about halfway through the season, Justin Herbert. And I think that there's a chance that in 2019, I think that Herbert could be the number one pick overall in the NFL draft. There's a chance of that happening. He's going to be a star quarterback. Well, he threw 15 touchdowns through 5 picks when he was out last year. But it's really not about the teams that are big favorites. And that's the big misconception on the first weekend of college football. It's about who they're playing and how bad that team is. Do they have any chance of staying in the game? We know that these teams that are big favorites are going to win. It's just a matter of how much. It's super rare on an opening week for a team to be 40-point favorites and win by 3. The competition in college football has narrowed significantly through the years. There aren't a lot of blowouts like there used to be. Here in my home state of Florida, we have Central Florida is a good team. Florida Atlantic is a good team. Miami, Florida State, and even in Texas, all the Texas teams are good too. In California, you see the same thing. The talent pool is there everywhere now. So many kids are choosing football over baseball and the other sports, so that there's only 2 or 3 players that are superstars in college, and everybody else is more or less the same. But the team that Oregon is playing against Saturday night is one of the worst teams in college football, and that's Bowling Green. They lost their last 3 games last year. They finished 2-10. They had one of the worst defenses in all of college. They brought in Carl Pelini to be their defensive coordinator. They have a sophomore quarterback there. They have about half their starters returning, so they should be a little bit better. But I just really think that this is a game that when I look at the opponent, I see, the potential for this to be 31-0 in the first quarter as opposed to the end of the game. Oregon is 31-point favorites. I hate going down this road in week 1. There isn't a ton of value for me in week 1 on a lot of the games, and I hate betting big favorites. I don't like to do it. I like to bet underdogs more than I like to bet favorites. That's just the way that I am. But I think Oregon is going to roll in this game against Bowling Green. I don't think they stand a chance. It's a very tough environment. And Oregon really should be 36, 37-point favorites, but there's a little bit of uncertainty based on the way they finished last year. They lost their bowl game to Boise State, even with this quarterback that I'm telling you about in Justin Herbert. But if there is one game on the board, I do think Oregon wins probably about 45, 50 points. I don't think Bowling Green has a shot. So Oregon would be minus 31, my pick for this week.
All right. I love it. Any other games you're looking at there that we should take notice of?
I mentioned a couple of the decent ones. I think that, look, when you're talking about the number 1 team in college football, I think that maybe it's not a game to bet against Louisville, but given the way that Alabama finished their season last year with playing Jalen Hurts all season long and then going to their freshman in the final quarter of that game and coming back and all the way to win, that's the kind of thing where you can study a game in week 1 and prepare for the rest of the season, because you know that Alabama, no matter what, Howard, is going to be favorites in every game they play this year, and probably big favorites too. So you can study that game just by watching it and not betting it, and then maybe you find some value betting against Alabama as the season goes on. We know that they're going to end up winning 10 or 11 games this season for sure, but it's just not a guarantee that they're going to cover the spread. Teams like Notre Dame, Alabama always get bet up by the public because they're the favorite teams by the public. They love Notre Dame. People love to see Notre Dame win. Maybe you and I hate them and we don't want them to win, but there are so many fans out there that bet those teams, so their lines tend to be always inflated. The other interesting game this weekend is Maryland taking on Texas. Maryland went through all of the offseason stuff with their coaching and the hazing, and unfortunately the player passed away. It was just a horrible story. And the public has bet up Texas in a big way. I don't think anybody wants to see Maryland win outside of the kids in that locker room this year. And so that line has been inflated. The only question is, does Maryland rally around that situation, and do they keep that game close against Texas? Texas should be better this year under Tom Herman than they were last year. So, it's not a matter of I like or love the game, but it's interesting to see how the public has rallied around that, and they feel that Maryland is kind of in flux a little bit with everything that's happening and losing coaches and, of course, their player passing away. Sometimes, though, Howard, the team rallies. They get it. You don't know what's going on in that locker room. Maybe Maryland's going to roll together and say, hey, it's us against the world. We've seen that before. Maybe they keep the game close. Maybe they win. But the value right now would be to take the Terrapins, because that line opened up at 8.5. It's now like 14.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us here on the first video / live stream here at Wager Alarm, guys. Craig and I are going to be here regularly, multiple times during the week. We're going to chime in on what we think when the lines open up. We're going to be out here. We're going to be doing a rundown of what the opening lines are. We're going to talk later on during the week when it's a lot closer to basically like Friday nights are where we're looking at injury reports are out for the NFL. The lines have moved, and we can kind of take a look at what we're going to do right before the deadline to submit our picks for the Westgate Super Contest. So stay tuned with us throughout this season here, guys. Beginning of the week, middle of the week, end of the week. Craig Mish, Howard Bender, thanks for tuning in. Wager Alarm, everybody. See you next time.